Welcome to a special edition of the Madison Miller podcast. It is February 24th. The NHL trade deadline was at 3 o'clock Eastern time today, so this podcast is going to solely go through the trades and discuss which ones I liked, which ones I disliked, some winners and losers, etc. All right, I'm going to go in the order of the NHL.com trade tracker. All right, so Arizona Coyotes acquire Marcus Hannikin from the Blue Jackets in exchange for a 2020 7th round pick. That's nothing. This is a depth piece for them. The Tampa Bay Lightning have acquired Barclay Goodrow, a 2020 third round pick from San Jose for a 2020 first, and forward Anthony Greco. I think that the Lightning overpaid for this player. Barclay Goodrow is somebody that only has 8 goals on the season. He's a bottom 6 forward. And unbelievable. That is a huge win for San Jose. Yeah, the pick is a late first round pick, but this draft is very deep. And for those teams that are like either rebuilding or close to ending rebuilds or starting afresh, this is the right draft. This draft is loaded. I think the 2021 draft is loaded as well. So that is an absolute home run for San Jose. Meanwhile, Barclay Goodrow, I think, will help Tampa Bay. I think he'll be in their bottom 6, but they just paid a very, 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 very steep price for somebody who, quite frankly, isn't that good anymore. Blue Jackets acquire Devin Shore from Anaheim for Sonny Milano. 2 forwards that are like third liners. Milano I like. Shore is okay. I think that's like a swap. It cancels each other out. Anaheim's obviously a team that is not in contention. Columbus is still in it. I think they're a team that's heading in the wrong direction because of all the injuries and whatnot. Flames acquire Eric Gustafson from the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for a 2020 third round pick. Nice deal for Calgary. They needed help on defense. Chicago is a team that needs to start a rebuild. A third round pick for Gustafson isn't the worst thing in the world. Gustafson's had a nice year, but they could have got more for him. Capitals acquired Daniel Sprong from Anaheim for defenseman Christian Djoos. Sprong is somebody that will be a bottom 6 guy for them, penalty killer. Blackhawks acquired TJ Brenneman from the Flyers for Nathan Noel. So that's just a minor league swap right there. Oilers acquired Tyler Ennis from the Senators for a 2021 5th round pick. Ennis, bottom 6 guy. Edmonton's a team that's going to the playoffs. Ottawa's rebuilding. Flames acquired Derek Forbett from the Kings in exchange for a 2021 5th round pick, or 4th round pick. So, Calgary's starting to get some depth here on defense. Vegas acquired Nick Cousins in exchange for a 2021 4th round pick. That's an interesting one. Vancouver acquires Louis Domingue from the Devils in exchange for Zane McIntyre. So backup goalie swap between a team that's going to the playoffs and a team in the lottery. Penguins acquire forwards Connor Sheary and Evan Rodriguez from Buffalo in exchange for Dominic Kahn. Connor Sheary back in Pittsburgh. I think Sheary will thrive, and he will be in a similar role as he was in those championship runs a few years ago. Panthers acquire Emile DeJuice from Dallas in exchange for a 2026 round pick. Boston acquires Nick Ritchie from Anaheim in exchange for Danton Heinen. I think Ritchie's somebody that will help Boston. He provides some depth. Someone that I like as a player. He's young. And Anaheim gets an asset for him. One that I'm not a huge Heinen fan, but we'll see. I really like Ritchie as a player much more than Heinen. Oilers acquire forwards Andres Anthasiou and Ryan Kuffner from Detroit in exchange for Sam Gagner, 2020 second and a 2021 second. Great move for Edmonton. I think Athanasiou will help McDavid in that offense. Detroit gets 2 seconds. And if in 2 of the drafts that I mentioned just before that are really good. And Gagne is just a throw-in in that deal. So, good trade for both sides. I think Athanasiou will help Edmonton. Buffalo acquires Wayne Simmons from New Jersey in exchange for a 2021 fifth-round pick. Terrible trade. Simmons should have gone to a contender. Buffalo's not that. And good on the Devils for getting something for him. Penguins acquire Patrick Marleau from San Jose for a conditional third-round pick in 2021. Marleau will help Pittsburgh. He brings some veteran experience. This is pretty much a ring chaser for Marleau at this point. Then San Jose gets what I think is proper value. Philadelphia acquires Derek Grant from Anaheim in exchange for Kyle Soroso in a 2024. Not a bad deal. I think Grant will give them some depth. Philadelphia acquires Nate Thompson from Montreal in exchange for a 2021 fifth. Good deal for Philly. Thompson's a good depth piece, fourth liner. Colorado acquires goalie Michael Hutchinson from the Maple Leafs in exchange for defenseman Calle Rosen. Avalanche have been hurt by goalie depth with some injuries they got, so I think Hutchinson will fill in nicely as a backup. Carolina acquires Vincent Trocheck in exchange for forwards Eric Holla, Lucas Wallmark, Eetu Lassarian, and defenseman Chase Prisky. I think this is an excellent move for the Hurricanes. Trocheck is somebody that really hasn't fit in Florida over the past year or so, and I think Trocheck will really help the Hurricanes out a lot here. So, great move by Carolina. Although Wallmark and Hall are good role players, but Trocheck really will help the Hurricanes. Islanders acquired Juan Gabriel Pageau in exchange for a 2020 conditional first rounder, a 2020 second, and a conditional 2022 third. And then they extend him to a 6-year deal worth $35 million. I think this is a deal that will really help the Islanders. They needed a top 6 forward, and they land one here with J.G. Pageau. Ottawa got a nice haul back for somebody that they really tried to extend. So I think this is a win-win for both sides. Colorado Avalanche acquire Vladislav Namestnikov in exchange for a 2021 fourth-round pick. Vlad will help them from a depth standpoint. He just bounced around a lot over the past few years, going from Tampa to the Rangers, Rangers to Ottawa, and now back on a contender in Colorado. Edmonton Oilers acquire Mike Green from the Detroit Red Wings in exchange for Kyle Brodziak and a conditional fourth-round pick. Talked about this earlier in my regular show. I think Green will help the Oilers. He's been in some big games with the Capitals in the past. And I think that he's someone that will bring that experience to Edmonton. And then the rest of the trades happened the past couple of days that I discussed. And then the biggest news of the day, I think, came from the New York Rangers extending Chris Kreider 7 years, making $6.5 per year. 6.5 times 7 is 45.5. I think that contract's a steal for the Rangers, especially with the TV deal coming up, so that's going to look like a bargain. I thought that if he entered the open market, he'd get much more. I think Kreider wanted to be a Ranger. I think that the Rangers are a team heading in the right direction under John Davidson at the helm at the presidents of hockey ops position. So I think that was the right move to extend Kreider rather than trade him, although I think they would have gotten the mega haul and probably would have gotten the biggest package back by a desperate contender. But they keep Kreider, and they did make a move by trading away defenseman Brady Shea to Carolina in exchange for a first-round pick, which is a conditional pick from the sense that they get the worser pick of Carolina and Toronto. And I forget how that pick, the Toronto-Carolina pick, came about. There must have been a trade or something. I can't think of exactly what it was. But Shea, I'm not a huge fan of this player. He's somebody that had its best moments in the 2017 playoffs where they played the Senators in the second round and upset Montreal. And then, obviously, we all know that the Senators took Pittsburgh to Game 7, and that Sens team really didn't belong in the conference finals. I think that both the Bruins and the Rangers looked past them, and Pittsburgh did up until they scored that overtime goal in Game 7 to get them back to the Stanley Cup final that year. But, yeah, Shea goes to Carolina. I think he'll help them and brings them some depth. And Carolina also acquired Sami Vatanen from New Jersey for a second rounder. And I think both those players will help. Vatanen's been injured. If he comes back and is a contributor for Carolina, then that's a bonus. I'm a fan of Vatanen. I think Vatanen is excellent. And I really think that because of his injury, he would have gotten more in return for New Jersey. And I think that Carolina overpaid for Shea. And obviously now the Rangers have that asset and that other first-round pick. They'll either keep it or they trade it in a deal to make themselves a step towards Stanley Cup contention, the Rangers could be a Stanley Cup contender next year conceivably if their offseason goes well. And at the very least, the 2021-2022 season is when they'll really be one of the best teams in the league, I think, with Panarin, Kreider, and Zibanejad all locked up. Lundqvist's contract off the books. Kakko is going to be more experienced by then. So I do think Shea will help Carolina, but I think they overpaid for that. And then Vatanen, I think, will help them if he comes back and returns to form. A trade that fell through. The Islanders were supposed to acquire Zach Parise from Minnesota, and they're supposed to send back that Andrew Ladd contract to Minnesota. So bad contract for bad contract. Parise, I think, is the better player at this stage. Ladd is somebody that I think was a product of those good Chicago teams and those other good teams he was on in the past. But Parise is underachieved in Minnesota, even though he's been on a couple playoff teams there with the Wild, and obviously was the best player on that Devils team that made the 2012 Stanley Cup final. I think he would have helped the Islanders from an experience standpoint, but I do like the J.G. Pageau deal for them, and I think he'll help that forwards group and that offense get back on track with Anders Lee and Matthew Barzal there on the island, buddy. Now I'll do some winners and losers of the deadline as a whole. Winners, Pittsburgh Penguins go out and acquire Jason Zucker to go with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. Bring back Connor Sheary. They lost Jake Gensel for the year. I still think that's a big loss for them, but they're surviving without him, and that's a credit to them, and thriving, obviously, as well. That's credit to Mike Sullivan and Crosby and company. This is going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Patrick Marleau will give them some experience. I think he'll be motivated as well. Obviously, Marleau's been on some good teams that went far in the past, but this is his best shot to win a cup, in my opinion, with this group of players. The Washington Capitals premier a winner. They acquire Ilya Kovalchuk to be in their bottom six. He's had a nice year with Montreal, and Montreal got some value for him. So I think he will help that team. Brendan Dillon will help the Capitals as well on defense. So I think the Capitals had a good deadline. Islanders, I'll give a win for getting Pageau and locking him up. Even though they gave up a lot, we give them credit for giving him that extension as well. I think I would have felt better about the Rangers had not been for that terrible car accident that happened last night involving Pavel Buchnevich and Igor Shesterkin. I think that will hurt them for the next couple of weeks from a win-loss standpoint. It might come back to haunt them a little bit in terms of their playoff chase. Brady Shea is a loss, but not a detrimental loss. I'm not a huge Brady Shea fan, as I mentioned, and they got a first for him, which is very, very good. Extending Chris Kreider. So I think other than the accident, the Rangers had a good deadline. New Jersey got some assets for Wayne Simmons and Taylor Hall and a bunch of guys that they shipped away. Obviously, Blake Coleman as well. So I think New Jersey is a winner. I think Columbus is a loser because of all these injuries, and they trade away Sonny Milano, who I like, and I didn't like that return. I think they could have gotten more than Devon Shore. So I think they're a loser. Tampa Tampa Bay's a big winner in my mind, getting Blake Coleman. I don't like the other trade, though, for Barkley Goodrow. I think they gave up a lot for him. I think they gave a lot for Coleman as well, but I think those two players will help them, especially Coleman. Boston, not the big splash that I was expecting. Andres Kasich, I think, will help them. I think they overpaid for him. I'm not going to really consider the Bruins a big winner. Tampa, I don't think is a huge winner either. But I wouldn't consider either of those top two Atlantic teams losers either. I think the Metro did better in terms of the top-heavy Metro teams. I think they did better at the deadline than the two top teams in the Atlantic Division. Toronto, I think, is a loser. They are just stuck in cap hell. I discussed this with John Buchacross on my show last week. They really couldn't do anything. Jake Muzzin, they brought in, they extended him. Muzzin came in last year. And I still think that they can make the playoffs. I think that third spot's between them and Florida in their division. And obviously that second wild card could be there in that between those two and the Rangers and Carolina and Columbus, Islanders, etc. But I think Toronto's a big loser. I think the Panthers are a loser for trading Trocheck. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs either, but I think Toronto makes it and their talent wins out. I think that Carolina landing Trocheck was humongous. I consider Carolina a big winner at the deadline, by the way, as well, landing those two defensemen, even though they overpaid for them, and Trocheck. The Sabres, I think, are a loser. Even though they traded away some players today. And Wayne Simmons, what does that do? It's just an expiring contract. But yeah, that was confusing. I think Ottawa's a winner for landing a lot of assets for J.G. Pageau to help accelerate their rebuild. I think Montreal's a winner because they gained some stuff for Kovalchuk and not Ben Sherrod. They traded away somebody else that they got something for. I just can't think of who it was. And so that's a good deadline for the Habs. I think that the Red Wings did well by getting some picks for some of their guys that they shipped away. Western Conference winners and losers. I forgot to mention the Blackhawks traded away Robin Leonard to Vegas for a second-round pick and Malcolm Subban. Blackhawks, I think they're a loser. They got some stuff for Gustafson and the goalie Leonard, but I think that that's a team that's really stuck right now in mediocrity, and I don't know the next time they're going to be a good team. They have a lot of veterans on there that are overpriced that are also Stanley Cup champions, so they have that championship experience. But I just think that they're just in a bad situation. That's kind of like Toronto, except probably worse, because a lot of Toronto's guys are young and in their prime, and Chicago's guys, other than Patrick Kane, are past their primes. Although Taves is still playing well, but he's not the player he was 5 years ago. The Predators, to me, are a big loser. They're a team that has underachieved this year and I think had to shake it up a little bit, and they did absolutely nothing. The Blues, I think, Marco Scandella's the person that Montreal traded away and got something for, the defenseman. I had Ben Sherrod in my head, but it was Marco Scandella that they dealt away to St. Louis. I think that's a good pickup for St. Louis and good on Montreal for getting something back for Marco Scandella. So I think the Blues are a bit of a winner here because they get Scandella to give them some depth on defense. Dallas didn't really do anything for me. I think they're a loser. Disappointed in them a little bit. Colorado gets Nemestikov, and then they get the goalie. I think they'll be fine. I still think that's a team that can win the cup. I think this all depends on Gallbauer's health. So to me, they're neither a winner or a loser. Arizona got Taylor Hall a couple months ago, but they really haven't done much other than minor pieces. They really haven't played all that well. They're down to 5th in their division with 70 points, and they are in the second wild card right now, so they didn't do much right now. I don't think that that's a playoff team in the Western Conference, so I wasn't thrilled with they did, other than getting Taylor Hall. So I don't know if they're a winner or a loser. I just put them in the middle. I think Hall will help them, though, obviously. Vegas gets Robin Leonard, who's having a great season. Malcolm Subban, meanwhile, is still young and trying to develop in this league. But Vegas is a win-now team, so good on them for getting Robin Leonard, who's had a nice year in Chicago. And I think they did well. Anaheim did well getting a first-round pick for the guy they shipped to Boston. And they shipped away some other depth pieces, too, and got stuff back. The Kings are a loser. They didn't do anything. I consider Anaheim a winner, by the way, because they got the first from Boston. Also, in the Pacific Division, San Jose is a huge winner for getting a first-round pick for a role player. That alone, you're an automatic winner. You've had a ton of injuries this year. You need a rebuild. You're probably regretting the Carlson deal now that especially he's injured. But getting a first-round pick for Barclay Goodrow is a massive win for the San Jose Sharks. Edmonton, to me, is a winner for getting depth on defense and getting some scoring with McDavid. So, good job on Edmonton. Calgary didn't really do much. As of right now, they are in the first wild card in the Western Conference. So maybe they believe in Rittich and they'll just go with it. Vancouver is in third in that division right now. They made a trade a little while ago. So that's a team that really is trying to go for it a little bit. So I got to give them some credit. They made the trade for Tyler Toffoli of the Kings. You know what? Never mind on the Kings with Toffoli. I called them a loser. I called them a loser for today. But for the deadline as a whole, I think they did fine. Tyler Madden, Tim Schaller, second rounder, and a 2022 conditional pick for Toffoli is pretty good. So, sorry, Kings. I forgot you traded away Toffoli a few days ago. But today, I didn't like what you did, but Toffoli deal, not bad for them. So, Toffoli will help Vancouver. Winnipeg didn't do anything. They're kind of in a bad situation right now. And then Minnesota did a good job getting that good package from Pittsburgh for Ryan Donato. So that's it for the trade deadline special podcast. Back to my regular show tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a great night, everybody.